Hello, it's Bambaji here with another gate transit. We are now in gate 47, and this is called the gate of oppression, the gate of realizing. The 47th gate of oppression is found in the Ajna center. It's pointing up towards the head center to its harmonic gate, the 64, at the other end of the channel. The 64 is called before completion, and it's the gate of confusion, and we looked at it in the last transit. And it forms the channel of abstraction, which is a design of mental activity and clarity. The 47th gate is under tremendous pressure from the head center, that is center that's just above it that we've just come from. It's the pressure to try and make sense of the abstract. And what that means is to try and make sense of whatever stored memory is available. And it is this stored memory that becomes a pressure on gate 47. The logical process, on the other side, it deals with patterns that can be worked out. There's a doubt, a question that needs an answer. The question is found, job done, excellent, all go home. The 47th gate is in the abstract process, and it is always trying to make sense out of the experiential snippets, the little bits and pieces of experiential memory. And the thing about trying to make sense out of things is that you never truly get a resolution. You know, in many ways, trying to make sense out of something is like trying to come to a point of clarity emotionally. And the abstract process and the emotional process, they are deeply connected to each other. The common denominator is time. This gate needs a certain amount of patience as it wades through the emotion it is receiving until realization dawns. If you have the 47th gate in the channel with the 64, then there is a consistent process at work. There's a consistent process, which doesn't mean it's an easy process. You know, if you only have the 47th gate in an open ajna or undefined ajna, then it's a very difficult thing because you haven't got the opportunity of that consistency. You can't sort of keep it moving along in the same way as when you've got the whole channel. If you follow the daily transit report that I do, you will know that the first line of the hexagram is the foundation. It tells you what the essence of the hexagram is. And the first line of gate 47 is called taking stock. And it says the ability in times of hardship to concentrating on eradicating negative forces that have led to oppression and realizing that negative forces have to be eradicated. So right there in the foundation, there's already the presumption of the difficulty of what it is to try to make sense out of things. There can be a tendency for the abstract mind to have negative thoughts. It's a difficult process, as I said. It is without clarity or without certainty. And this can lead to a certain amount of melancholy or depression. These gates and channels between the head and the ajna are a bit like the ones between the sacral and the root. They are format channels and they carry a bit of a depression with them, and that's something that can be mirrored in these gates of the head and the ajna. So the whole thing with the difficulty here is that without clarity or certainty, without absolute fact, there is that tendency for negative thought. One of the most important things for the abstract mind to discover is positivity. You know, but there are so many different ways of interpreting experience, and that in itself is a difficulty and a challenge. And that in itself can bring up this sort of negativity. The first line in the detriment, it says the delusion of seeing oppression as exclusively eternal. And this is about having the sense that the world is against you. So this is a gate that carries a real heaviness with it. You'll see as we go through this overview. But if you're carrying the 47th gate, hopefully you can see just from what we've already looked at, if you're carrying this and you're not operating as yourself, then you will be in a place of allowing your mind to be your inner authority. And that inner authority is going to be deeply driven by its negative thoughts and by the sense that it is fighting against everything and everybody. We need the capacity of our 47 to make sense of things, because humanity is always in an experiential process, and we need it to be operating as an outer authority, which is its correct view in life, not as an inner authority. The mind as inner authority becomes an enormous burden, and it can completely misdirect the life. The 64th gate, the fuel of this conceptualizing potential, it can be compared to going to the cinema where you expect to see this feature-length film only to discover that the cinema is showing thousands of little tiny video clips. And to realize which single clip out of all of those makes sense is the potential of this gate of realization, this 47. It's no wonder in a way that it is also called the gate of oppression. Making sense out of life is an ongoing process. The format energy of the sensing circuit is cyclical. The secret to handling the process of making sense of things is also the secret of this entire circuit, and it's patience. You cannot go into the image pool and rummage around hoping to find a resolution to the unresolved pressure. There is only waiting. You're just waiting for that moment of realization, that aha moment. The voice gave Ra many names for the gates and the channels, and for different ways of seeing and looking at the body graph. And there is a basic duality in the names of all of the gates, really. And the 47th gate, the gate of oppression on the mundane plane, in a world that does not understand how things work, as such, it can also be seen as oppressive. This goes back to understanding the nature of the mind and to understanding what we have learned in human design, that when it comes to authority, the mind has no inner authority. It is perhaps the greatest challenge to mental beings to accept that their minds have no inner authority. Authority is the place where you get a reliable yes or no. Authority is the place where reliable decision-making can be found. And this does not describe the mind. There is no inner authority in the mind. The oppression of the 47 comes when you are trying to make sense of your own life for your own decision-making processes, and that's not what it's for. Its job is to make sense out of the past for others. It's to realize for others. You know, the mind is for others. The mind, the mental system, it always has outer authority. You know, everyone's mind has outer authority, and it can be of intrinsic value to the other. It can be a very beautiful thing. And it is there for the sole purpose of being able to share what it is to be in these vehicles. It is, you could say, in its crudest form, it's that kind of global consciousness. It is not about tormenting yourself. It can be hard, Ra said, to find a 47 who doesn't torment themselves. It's a bit like finding an 18 who isn't hypercritical about themselves. The headline above the lines in the Ravi Ching, it says a restrictive and adverse state as a result of internal weakness or external strength, or both. Oppression. It's a heavy name, you know, it comes with a weight to it. And the 47th gate can be very serious. People who carry this can have a serious kind of heaviness to them in the way that they express in the world. The process of having to make sense out of confusion can be very oppressive. This is not a gate that is easy to live with if you don't understand how it works. Because to make sense out of something doesn't actually mean anything in and of itself. It is part of a longer process. Making sense out of something leads to a concept, which may lead to an idea, and that idea can be fine-tuned and colored and woven into something that is stimulating, so that other people can see that what you're saying does in fact make sense. And that is a complex process. You know, the aha of, whoa, it makes sense, I've got it. That doesn't actually mean you've got it. The pressure is not released by being able to make sense out of it. And this is why this is a gate of oppression. It's not enough to make sense out of the confusion, because where does that go? What does that actually ultimately mean? If you are letting it go out to the other, then that's good, that's okay, that's healthy. But if you are then sitting within yourself with your own sense of it, and you're trying to find your own ideas, and you're just making use of that to guide your own process, then that can lead to terrible suffering. 47th hexagram is oppressive. There is the inability to prove anything. This is not the splenic system that is sitting in the excuse me, it's not the splenic system. Well, we know it's not the splenic system, it's in the head. What am I trying to say here? That was going really well for a while, wasn't it? I was in my flow. Okay, so this is not where we get my words have left me. Okay, there's no spontaneity here. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, so this is no splenic spontaneity involved in this head process. Okay, there is no in the moment gratification. Sorry. Settle down again in a moment. If you think about all of those images that are flying through, all in the wrong order, and just having that sequence out of order being fed down to you to make sense of, that in itself can be very difficult for the psyche to deal with. And yet it is here, it is part of our experience, and it has to be dealt with. And in the end, all you can really do is guess. I mean, think back to gate 4. We had gate 4 who's desperate to find the answer. They don't actually care whether the answer is true or not, as long as they've got an answer. And it's a bit similar here with this gate of realizing. It's like it doesn't really matter if it's true, as long as it makes sense in a way. It's an abstract process. The nature of the emotional system, let's see if I can get this one, get my words right for this one. The emotional system, it generates, part of its process is to generate guilt, blame, shame. All of these sorts of things come out of the emotional system, as well as their opposite. But these are things to look at the moment as we go through here. So making sense out of things in a way, it's about who's to blame. Who's going to get this one on their doorstep? It's like, is it the day? Is it the situation? Is it the transit? Is it me? Is it them? One of the things that is part of the realization process is realizing who to blame. That's on a personal level, of course. It's also many other things. But the reality is that it's uncomfortable, because even when you get to the point of making sense out of it, as I said, that doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't say anything. It still has to be that idea. It still has to become something that stimulates others. And so it has that cyclical process, that time, patience. And one of the most difficult things for human beings to do is make sense out of what it is to be a human being. All of our history that has been generated out of this mental stream, it's coming with the capacity because it looks at the past and it's trying to make sense out of past experiences. So it has enormous value. It is also difficult because trying to make sense out of what it is to be human is a difficult task. Have I made that clear? It's a difficult gate. And let's also remember the or not, because we have to always remember the or not. There will be some people who have this gate and none of this does anything to them. For them, it's an easy gate and it's a straightforward gate. What I'm offering to you is what Ra wrote about it, and we know Ra with his shock and his, his way of delivering things. But I know people who do have this gate, and I also know that they do find it difficult. So yeah, let's go with that. I want to show you the opposite now. We have the grounding to gate 47 is in gate 22. This is where the earth is sitting, and you can see it here in the mandala. Let's look at it in the body graph. So it is down there in the solar plexus, and it is called the gate of grace, and it's the gate of openness. Gate 22 actually is on a slightly different subject, is interesting. It's not interesting. It has a meaning for me. I was looking at how long I've been doing these transits, and I realized that the last transit that I will be doing in this way, that I am presenting it and doing it as the overview and then the 6 lines, will actually be gate 22 in March. So I am sort of halfway through my process of offering these interpretations of the lines, the gates and lines of the Ravi Ching. So this is quite something. I've been doing this for 6 months, which is whoa. Okay, so back to this, and it's if you have the gate of oppression and something where we know it has these flavors of negativity and it's slight depression possibly, and it's that difficulty, the constantly cycling through the memories and the experiences, trying to put them in order, then giving them to the collective and saying, here you go, this makes sense. Isn't this a value? Maybe it's really nice to have that grounding in the gate that is called grace, to bring some grace into the process of realization, or not, of course. Gate 22 is actually the only social channel in individuality. So perhaps it can in some way soften the trials and tribulations of gate 47. It can lighten the load a little bit. Gate 22 is acoustic to the visual nature of the 47. So perhaps that brings a balance or maybe a sense of completeness. Gate 22, it says it has the potential to realize the spirit. And so the possibility to share that spirit. Well, sharing is collective, which is a 47 trait. And also realizing, this word realizing is of course associated with gate 47. So there's another link between the two of them that can be pondered. It's a good word, ponder. What's your experience of gate 47? I don't have it myself. So what I'm giving you here is what I've read in the Ravi Ching and in the Lion Companion. If you have this gate and you have something to offer on it, I would love to read it or hear about it. Please do share it if you feel so inclined. Would you like to share your experience of 47? Yes, I can see you. There's a blackbird. I'll be there in a moment. Okay, thank you very much. We'll be back in a few days, 6, 7 days, for gate 6. That would be the next gate that we move into. So until then, as always, thank you for joining me on this gate overview, and go gently.